Hey there, it's Simone with Bulletproof Business Growth, as always with some ideas and insights, what to pay attention to when you are growing and scaling your business. Today I want to talk a little bit more about accountability systems, because most of our clients, accountability in their teams is always something that's not quite at the level where it needs to be, so it's something that we absolutely focus on because we all know how incredibly difficult it is when you have assigned something to somebody and you're relying on them to get it done, and too often when it's the worst time you find out it is not done. So this is really, when you're thinking about what costs you a lot of energy, it's exactly that. So we have to install a system that really transforms the chaos to calm. So, in the last few weeks, we've been discussing a lot about planning, about how to shift responsibilities through updated and empowering delegation practices, which are all really important to kind of set the foundation for all of this, because none of this stuff works when you're not being clear, when there's no clear plan, no clear blueprint, when nobody knows what's going on, when projects change every other day. So we have to make sure that that foundation is already set. So we have to really look at it from a perspective of, have we done everything that we can do, and now how can we empower the rest of the team to do an amazing job? So it's really, we have to get from this place where you're guessing if it might get done to you can absolutely rely on your team, because that's also something that'll empower you to get more out of the weeds, to hand over more of the responsibility so they can grow more, and of course you could focus more. So many of our clients come to us first where they really feel like their business is completely out of control, and it feels like this up and down roller coaster ride, which is exhausting, it's frazzling, and it absolutely destroys your focus. So if accountability ever felt daunting to you, or you need more harmony on your team and in your business, keep listening. This episode is absolutely for you. So for most business owners in general, trying to patch accountability happens with these scattered stop and go efforts that might work for a day or a week, and sometimes even for a few weeks, but then it all kind of starts falling apart. And the really funny thing that I've noticed is that a lot of times our really successful clients who've been implementing the systems that they're learning from us, sometimes once they leave, I hear back from them months later and they say to me, "Hey Simone, I don't really know what's going on, but the stuff stopped working." And then I dig in a little bit, and what generally turns out is that the stuff didn't stop working, they stopped working the stuff. So now we're back to a place where they are not implementing, so the results kind of go away. So you have to really look at this as something. This is a practice. Accountability is a practice. So you can't try to patch it and duct tape it with these scattered stop and go efforts. You have to do something that's actually a system that you implement, because otherwise it will not take root. It's very, very difficult to break patterns that you've been practicing for many, many years. It's very, very difficult to break those patterns with your team because they have taken on your patterns. So it has to be something that you're absolutely committed to and that you will implement consistently, right? So if there's one word about this entire episode today, it's consistency. So it is pretty awesome, though, when it really is a miracle when you treat this like an all-important nervous system upgrade. So it's kind of like you are upgrading the wiring for yourself and for your team, where it becomes a process. And that's really part of the process, is dynamiting old habits. So it's kind of going from where you were, where it was kind of this up and down roller coaster ride, to flipping this new standard of operations that is really peace. And where the standard is, we have clarity, we have consistency, and the only way that works is when you set expectations and practices that are actually doable. They can be audacious, they can be stretch practices, but we have to start with something that people can and will do consistently. Otherwise, you might as well save your time and your effort, right? So first, what I already mentioned is we have to start with clarity, because it's far underrated. And despite the fact that it seems like they should, people can't read your mind. So if you think this is common, this would be common practice, this should be self-explanatory, think again. Don't assume anything. You have to make it clear to people what you actually want from them, right? So that's why we do the whole planning exercises. That's why we get together for meetings. That's why we do all this stuff, so people have clarity. But then also, we want to mix it up a little, because one of the biggest enemies to high performance is when people go to sleep. And that is what will happen when they do the same thing over and over and over without having any variety in there. So we have to bring in clarity, consistency, and certainty. And then the other part that people really need, it's like certainty and variety are two of the top human needs. So we have to bake them together for it to work. So when you mix project ownership with innovation, that really prevents boredom and complacency. So you can do that by establishing focus frames for your team, where for 3 weeks they're 100% focused on the routine work, catching up, getting things done, and creating a little bit of space. And then there's one work where they really focus on innovation, where they focus on improvement, where they focus on simplifying, right? So simplicity is one of the things that we all cherish. So focusing on innovation, clarity, and simplicity will really help your team to kind of mix it up. So when you do that, you do this 3 week like a sprint, and then you add this week that's a little bit more creative, that's a little bit more interesting, where people look at their current role, project, workflows, and they get to actually make it better. Now you have an unknown amount of control, engagement, and strategy happening within your team that you've never seen before. So that's number one. Number two is you really want to foster transparency on the team. And sometimes what's really useful, especially, generally we discourage people to complain and be negative or have problems or challenges, right? It's always about, we want to think positively, and we always want to just look for solutions. But look, sometimes humans just need to vent for a second. So try implementing clear sky meetings where the team gets to show up and share raw challenges. Now, there has to be a rule. The rule is no bitching, whining, and complaining. This is not what this is about. This is about surfacing true challenges that people have and that they need help with, and that are probably really frustrating to them, that are draining them, that are kind of robbing their joy in their work. So, because the goal here is to get into the power of shared thinking, to really use the hive brain so that we can solve problems in a much more powerful and interesting way too. So in those meetings, you get to listen, you get to be empathic, you get to set the rules and the expectations, and you also get to be the facilitator if people go a little bit off. But it's really about workshopping solutions. So this is where accountability regains humanity. When we supply room, we give room for people to have those moments, but from a positive frame, okay? And then the third thing, and this is one of my favorites, is forget about having those annual, biannual reviews. They're a terrible, terrible idea, because think about this clearly. When there's something that needs to be said, say it now. Don't wait 3 months, 6 months, or a year before you give somebody feedback and give them the opportunity that they can actually change the way they do things. It's a humongous amount of wasted time and effort, and frustration comes in and feelings come in. So forget about these reviews, because when you do this correctly, the way that we teach it is you have weekly one-on-ones, and that might feel like a ton of time spent, but the time you're going to save on the other end is going to far outpace the time that you're spending by having this time. Because for one thing, you help people have clear priorities, you help them unblock, you help them grow, you do all these like really important things in that time. And part of it is giving them clear understanding of how they're doing. They should always know what's up, how they're winning, how they're challenged, what they need to change, so they can actually make the changes. That also means they can trust you, and they can also trust themselves, right? And you can trust them because you already know that they're going to work on what they need to work on. So we want to really shift this this idea of one-on-ones that a lot of times in a lot of businesses are somewhat punitive. We want to shift to a place where this is your one-on-ones is your growth planning time. So we want to mix results with curiosity. So it's always about, look, what's the result we're driving? Of course, why else are we having these things? But it's about how will you improve and master your current skill set? How will you improve how you show up? How you improve how you help people do a better job? How you coach the team, whatever role they're in, right? And it's your job to praise their effort, their coachability, and really show how they're making a shift, because that's what really brings motivation to the table. When you help people understand what they're doing well, right? This is a lot of times I meet with a lot of resistance in this, because a lot of business owners are like, hey, I'm paying them for this. Why should I have to tell them over and over that they're doing a great job? I'm not here to pamper their ego. But it's not about that. It's about letting people know what's working, because when you do, they will do more of it without you having to actually do another thing. So let them know what's working, give them constructive, actionable feedback that they can do something with, and then give them clear requests and action steps so that they can actually improve in a reasonable time frame. So the key to really bring this shift into this high performance team that is accountable, that you can trust, let's go back down it. It's like clear expectations, which start with onboarding. So when people join your team, or even when you shift roles, iterate what are your standards? What are your values? What's the quality that we stand for as a company? Some companies are more about quantity than quality, and that's something that needs to be clear. Most of our clients are super high quality focused. So that is something that needs to be said and needs to be practiced with people who are new. We also need to talk about, what's the work-life balance in this company like? And it's very important, especially with the younger generations, because it's a big buzzword. It's a big hot button for people, because all the newer generations, they would rather make less money to work fewer hours and have more of a life. So when you're used to just pushing, and you're hiring people of, the younger generations, you're going to run into some issues. So what I find really useful is to talk about, look, we're going to have go phases and we're going to have coasting phases. So when it's a go phase, we're going to let you know. That means go. That means you're going to have to put your personal interests somewhat aside for a while, but it's temporary. Like here's your phase, right? Here's your time frame that you're going to have to set your life a little bit aside, but that will be followed by a coasting phase when there is a lot more flexibility, when there is a lot more openness, when there's a lot more time to do the things we need to do. So when you're mixing those up and you're conscious about that and you're talking about that, that makes a lot of sense pretty much to everybody. And it also prevents workout, it prevents resistance, it prevents people from bouncing when you've just invested a lot of time and energy in them. So that's number one, clear expectations, doing really good onboarding, pointing out what's important to the company. And then when you do your planning and when you hold people accountable, you want to make sure that you involve them and you collaborate with them on measures. The way we teach it, you do your quarterly planning, you make sure that you have really, really good methods written down from high level but then you collaborate with them on the measures and the timelines so that they feel like they've had a hand in this plan. They're actually responsible for this plan. And this is kind of what gives them the ownership over goals and also over the evaluation of the success, because they were part of making this plan. And just make really, really sure that your metrics have absolutely tied to business objectives. We want to make sure that we know what we're measuring. Your KPIs always have to be 100% aligned with your vision, all the goals that you're setting forth, all the stretch, everything that they need to know, right? So that's number 2. And then number 3 is focus on continual improvement over punishing for failures. So this is, like, I was just speaking to a client who was just super hot under the collar because something big went wrong that cost the company a lot of money, and he was about to eviscerate and kill people. Not quite, but he was pissed. And, I only asked him one question. Is this a people problem? As in, they don't have the skills, they don't care, they don't show up for you? Or is it a process problem that actually needs something, that needs fixing from the top down and from the bottom up so everybody understands how they're part of it? And it turns out it was a process problem that the people had no control over, so it actually wasn't the team's fault. But what in that situation, what's really important is to look at, all right, so this got screwed up, so how are we going to make this better as a team? How are we going to keep making this better as a team? What does everybody need to know? So giving people a clear plan, what improvement looks like, and then checking in frequently to make sure that people get it and that they're working the improvement, and then giving them important feedback so that they're always feeling like they're actually getting better. Somebody cares, somebody sees them making an effort, and this is so important. Because a lot of times our clients complain because they're like, I don't understand. I told them exactly what to do. And then I asked, did you check in with them? Did you tell them what's working, what's not working? No, they should know it. Well, that's the issue right there. When people are putting in extra effort, they want to know that you notice, because then they're going to do more of it. Whereas if you don't notice, they're just going to peter out and stop doing it, right? So focus on continual improvement over perfection, and then really empower your team through collaboration, peer delegation, and peer relationships. So we really want to have this cross-functional communication so that whatever, if you have different departments, those departments need to understand how they work together, how it's really important, who's dependent on what, who's responsible for what. They want to be empowered to delegate to each other when, it makes more sense for somebody else to do something. And that also prevents having silos. And that's one of the biggest costs in business, when one hand doesn't know what the other is doing, which is amazing how often that happens. So really empower through that peer delegation and peer relationship building. And then we want to establish routine reporting that's as automated as possible. So our clients use a process that we call CEO updates, where everybody writes a short summary of the week and sends it in the end of the week, so that you as a business owner, you know what's going on, you know what the wins were, you know what the challenges are, you know what to bring into your team meeting, and you know what to bring into your one-on-one. So it's a super important practice. You can also use PM tools to have that transparency and to help people hold each other more accountable, because everybody knows what they are responsible for. So that, and then of course, you want to model all this stuff. So this is where you become transparent about your own goals, about your own challenges, about growth opportunities. And as you're doing that, don't be afraid to ask your team for feedback. This is a really funny one. In our graduate mastermind, we use this frequently, where we encourage our owners to ask their leadership teams for feedback in terms of how they're doing and what they can do to make the team's work easier. And it's amazing how resistant people are to doing that. And all of our clients who have done it get really valuable feedback that they can implement and that they can really improve the culture, the relationships, and the functionality with. So that's kind of a funny thing. Now, we already talked about that work-life balance thing. Again, it's a really important tool for feedback. It's an important tool for avoiding burnout. And in general, it has gotten such a bad rep. But again, think about this, like we have to switch off the phases. We can't always just be in go phase. We have to bring in some coasting so that people can catch a breath, that they can remember who they are, and that they can get jazzed up again about doing this work. So a lot of this is really about being consistent, using the right accountability tools, and also having this mindset shift from, hey, when we are consistent, when we are clear, when we use the right tools, then we can be in a growth mindset and we can really work with each other. So we want to kind of shift from this frazzled, disjointed culture, which is kind of just the way it is, to having this synergy, the clarity that we really need to create sustainable growth. So that's about it, to really focus in and hone in on accountability and how to establish that system for your team. If you want to know more, we have a great new free workshop coming up this next week, starting May 20th. We're going to meet at 12 p.m. Eastern for an hour every day for 7 days in a row. And we're going to talk about everything we talked about today. We're going to talk about planning. We're going to talk about delegation. We're going to talk about accountability, about hiring, about visioning. We're going to talk about all the things that you absolutely need to set yourself up to grow your business in a most powerful but also in a sustainable way. So check that out. I'll put the link below. Join us next week, and I will see you next time.